Too many leaders lead for validation, not impact, for what they can get out of it more than what they can give to it. Hi, my name is Chris, and I'm obsessed with how leaders grow and develop, and I too have insecure moments. We all do. Glad you're here with me now on the SightShift podcast so you can learn how to lead for impact, not validation. Well, friends, welcome to the SightShift podcast. And we have done a series of interviews in 2 or 3 different runs before over the years, and we're doing another one. And this one's going to be a little bit different than any we've done before for a number of reasons. And what is super fun for me is to say to you, listeners, I get to have probably, for me, what is very selfish but exciting, the most fun by kicking off this new series with my special guest today, Mike Nardella. So, Mike, so glad you're here. Welcome. I'll give some people context on you and where you are and all that good stuff. But for now, just thank you for making the time to be here, man.
Awesome, man. Yeah, happy to be here.
Woohoo! So, you and I got connected a couple years ago, and this is a statement that I've made to you. And if we've worked with you and I haven't made it to you, and you're listening to this podcast, I'm sorry. I can love a lot of people, but I can't like everybody at the same level. Uh, and I've stated this to you, and it's such a feeling that's so strong for me. And that would be, man, I'd be sad to not have you in my life. So thankful for our paths to cross. Um, as we set up the context for some of that, just give us an understanding of you, your role, what you've done with your law firm, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, no, same to you, Chris. So yeah, my name's Michael Nardella. I'm the managing partner and owner of a law firm here in Orlando. We got about 20 lawyers, about 35 employees and contractors all together. And we do specialize in commercial law, commercial litigation, commercial bankruptcy, basically fights with businesses about money.
Yeah, I remember one time you had shared your model with me on like you kind of have two ends of the seesaw, whether the economy is going good or the economy is going bad, you're going to have work. Give us
Yep.
just a little bit more context on that.
Yeah, so a lot of firms that are similar to us or are boutique firms usually fall into one of two categories. They're either doing commercial litigation or they're doing commercial bankruptcy work. And one of my early bosses said some wisdom to me that I really latched onto, which is that, in good economic times, the bankruptcy side is going to suffer and the litigation side would do well. And then it goes vice versa. And so he imprinted on me always doing both of those. And that really has worked as a hedge. And, kind of the percentage of the firm, whether we're doing 60% of one and 40% of the other, vice versa, does shift with the economy and has allowed us to, weather good times and bad times. So, it's funny with bankruptcy because bad times for the economy is good for us. But when the economy is doing well, then litigation usually goes up too.
Yeah, I find that so interesting because I think so many businesses we work with have they haven't future-proofed the resilience of their model. So for you to get that kind of insight early on was fantastic. And when you and I connected, the firm was experiencing some success and growing, and at the same time for you, there was a relationship to the overall mission and vision that was more ambivalent, if I could say it that way.
Sure.
Where
Yeah.
were you in that mindset, that place, and where are you now?
Yeah. So, when you're young and you're in your late 20s and your early 30s, you're just going, you're just going because you need to go, right? You gotta make it happen. This is the time to do it. It's almost like survival mentality in a way where you gotta grow, you gotta earn, you gotta save, you got a family, you want to put kids in the schools you want to put them in, you want to have, the security and other things you want to have. And so um those aren't bad reasons, but those reasons were what propelled me into building the business in a
Mm.
way. Um, but those reasons weren't going to keep me going, right? They weren't the full motivation I was going to need. And the season of my life was changing. And those things were no longer had the power over me to keep me going, like all nighters and all the things it takes to deal with all the just crap you have to deal with to run a business. And so I'd say, a little over 2 years ago or so when we first met, I was sort of in that ambivalent, maybe a good way of putting it. Like I was still grinding, I was still pushing, but the reasons why we're pushing were no longer as distinct. And
Mm.
now the um, just the monetary goals weren't as motivating as they had been when I was in my early 30s and mid 30s, and obviously a lot hungrier.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the comment that I can't escape making, I feel like that's so pertinent for so many. At least you had drive, right? And you
Yeah,
had ambition. Um,
yeah.
and where do you think that came from for you?
It's interesting because when I was in college, I wanted to be a classics professor, right? I wanted studied ancient Greek and Latin. That was my background. Um, but I hadn't really thought about my life, like what my life would be like as a classics professor. And started to realize, like, you're a classics professor, don't get to live where you want. You may not get the job you want. And I was talking to my grandfather, old concrete business New York Italian guy, and he's asking me, all right, so you want to go get your master's in classics? And so you have friends that have done that. And I was like, yes. And he's like, well, what are they doing now? And I was like, well, one's managing a Pizza Hut, and I started to click. I was like, well, this is not going to give me the life I want. Um, and he said, look, you like all these things, go to work, and then in your 40s and 50s, you can go dig up all the bones you want. So, some wisdom there, right? I should listen to this. And so I think it just kind of crystallized for me that um, I wanted independence, I wanted freedom, I wanted a family, I wanted that family to be in a position where I could put them in the right schools and I could give them what they needed and protect them. Um, and um, and I just knew that to do that, I had to work and I had to get really good at something.
Mm.
I had to really find something and pour everything into it because um, being okay at a lot of things is a lot less effective than being really good at a couple things. And so I think it was just the conversations with my grandfather and just utilizing my imagination and just imagining my life and saying, well, what do I want it to be and what does it take to get there?
Yeah.
Um, and so that was enough to drive me, give me that ambition. Um, and it's a longer conversation, but it's funny for me, especially as I hire younger lawyers, how some of that drive isn't there in the new generation. And I think some of that comes from growing up in the financial crisis, growing up in COVID. There's just not the kind of optimism that I had, where I say to myself and believe it, that if I just work really hard and get really good at something, it's going to work.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just
Um,
interesting that I still bought into the American dream. I wasn't, not nearly as cynical as I thought I was.
yeah, yeah. We're going to come back to what I think you have a passion and a gift for, a developed skill for mentoring young men and especially attorneys. Do you think that's what it is? It's the crises that they experienced that caused them to have a pessimism that diminished their drive?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's related. I could never give a complete, analysis of it, but I think it's related to a lot of things. Like it's related to inflation, right? These kids can't afford a house. Like
Mm.
they, even if they're making great money, they can't afford a house. When I got out, of school, you could buy a house on my starting associate salary. That's in a good neighborhood that, was reasonable and rents were, I mean, my first apartment when I got out of school was like $800 a month. It was two bedroom right downtown Orlando. It's probably $2,800 a month right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
So there's just a kind of spirit in the air of pessimism
Yeah.
that has come in the last 10 years that wasn't there when I was getting out of school. And so I'm grateful that it wasn't there. In fact, I got out of school at like this peak moment too, right? Like I graduated law school in '07, and the financial system started grinding to a halt in fourth quarter of 2007, right? And so I'm sort of like the last of the people that graduated before the sort of we saw behind the curtain,
Yeah.
the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, this something we've connected on a ton, and your passion for classics. I think people listening to this could go, "Oh, okay." So he pushed aside his intellectual curiosities and just then grinded it out. I know that isn't true. Why isn't that true? How have you been able to integrate and stay curious and hungry in these intellectual pursuits while also doing the work of the legal profession?
Yeah. So I would say that statement is both right and wrong. I mean,
Mm.
I had to sacrifice a decent amount of the time I would have otherwise spent um,
Nerding
in
out.
it. Yeah, exactly. Intellectual pursuits, or whatever you want to call it, right? Like I had to prioritize and make choices. And I think again, that's another thing that I think is hard for the younger folks is um, knowing what to prune and what to cut off and what to, allow to grow. And so, um, I always made it a point to stay connected to those things um, in reading and study. But there were some times when, those things suffered. And I remember distinctly, especially the first couple of years of practicing law, like I'd get home late, it's dark, I'd eat some, bad food or something. I'd sit on the couch and I would want to put on, something intellectual like an old film, or I'd read a book, and I'd fall asleep on the couch and wake up at 3 in the morning with the light on and be like, what, where did my day go? Where did my night go? So there were sacrifices that had to be made. And I think that was sort of my grandpa's point was you can't have it
Yeah.
all at the same time.
Yeah.
You've got to plan, you got to do what you got to do, but you can't also go put your heart. I never put my heart fully in the pursuit of business success. Like I kept in my heart the future I wanted, which was get where you need to get, and then you can start to organize your time on your terms without um, the pressure of the survival, instincts screaming at you from the back of your head. If that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Oh yeah. I mean, and I think in my own experience too, it's like if the week was wide open, and we've joked about this before, like all the things I would research and study and nerd out
Mm-hmm.
on, but instead my commitments put me in a place that I can only allocate a certain amount of time for that. And I enjoy it a ton and it's super fun.
Right.
Um, but there are seasons where that allocation is very low, and there are seasons where I can let it breathe more. I think there are people that are listening to this that grind so hard on their business and leading it, primarily thinking of people like yourself who are entrepreneurial and are business owners. They don't get to that place like you did, where you get an initial jolt of success coming out of the gate. Um, what would you say to that person who's listening to this and they've been grinding on their business just to get it uh, solvent in their minds, whatever that is? It's at 20 employees, it's at 40 employees, it's 100 employees, and there's always that next frontier of we got to get there. And so they're not making time for those curiosities. How would you encourage, advise, or coach them to let that part of them live and breathe?
Yeah, that's a good question because I think one of the benefits of kind of coming to it the way I did, almost sort of involuntarily, being sort of dragged into the business world by necessity, um, is that business never was the end for me. It was a means,
Hmm.
right? And and I think that's why when we met 2 years ago, I was having some cognitive dissonance because I had made those allocations in such a way that I had lower allocations for, the pursuits, we call them intellectual pursuits or other things that I liked. I had lowered those allocations. Um, and now I had found, some success in what I needed to do, which I hadn't really consciously thought of, is like reallocate, right? I needed to reallocate some. And what I also found is that, um, you know, the more I put my heart in the business, the less productive I was in a sense. And by the business, I don't mean it as like I'm not saying it's bad to put your heart in your business. What I mean is the more I put my heart in the money and in the survival, like instinct to accrue and save and all those things, um, the less productive I was. And so um kind of a hard thing to articulate. But what I would say to that person is you have to like hold it loosely. You have to learn how to fight hard every day for your business and protect it while at the same time being completely comfortable with the fact that the business is not your identity, that its failure doesn't affect who you are, and that you don't have control
Mm.
over whether it's going to make it or not. You can increase odds and you can decrease odds based on your activities. But at the end of the day, um, you don't have control over it. And I also think I was aided in that mentality by my practice area because people are coming to me with businesses that are failing. This is what I do. I'm a bankruptcy lawyer. And so I would see businesses fail because people made mistakes, but I'd also see businesses fail because my guy had a great dry cleaner that's doing great. And then another one opens up across the strip mall. And now they're both splitting the customers and he fails, right? And it's not his fault in a sense, right? It just happens.
Mm.
And so you can't, you have to hold it loosely and understand that it doesn't defeat you personally because once you put your ego into the business's success or failure, um, you're it's going to get twisted up and you're going to start doing things for the wrong reasons and it's actually going to hurt your ability. So just to kind of encapsulate that, yes, you got to go all in, you got to fight, you got to stuff out there, but you can't make it about you and you can't um let it make you an anxious, miserable person because strangely enough, the more of your own ego you put in, the less well you're going to do, in my experience.
Yeah, that's powerful. The more ego you put into it, yeah, the less well you're going to do. Just so you know, too, and this is all just normal stuff. You may have a storm rolling through there in Orlando. Your video dropped out. Um, when you think about like the the ways that you get an upfront, close and personal view to so much business failure, um, and you're able to look at these and so yeah, and see some where, hey, this is clearly they didn't do something to increase their odds of success or they decrease their odds of success, or it's these situations that are just completely out of their hands. Um, how do you, and I know you're serving them legally, do you ever take on any kind of empathetic tone with them and say, hey, listen, I can look at the track record here of so many different businesses and this really doesn't look like it was your fault. Is that ever a place you're in with any of the business owners?
I mean, a lot, right? And a lot of times
they need to hear someone else talk to them and just, I don't know what it is, almost like just give them like a release or
Yeah.
an affirmation.
Yeah.
And frankly, even when it is their fault, they need this,
Yeah.
right? Because it's always our fault to some degree. We've always done something to increase the odds of failure, or whatever, right? And um, so much of it is psychological. So it just helped me through my career to just live in this world of failure because I got to see how people responded and what was responding well and what was responding poorly and what worked and what didn't. And so many times I've sat across the table from a client and and been the mechanism of their catharsis, to put it that way. Whatever that is, whether it's explaining to them like this isn't your fault, man, or explaining to them that this is your fault, but we're gonna figure it out and you're gonna be fine, or explaining to them, you shouldn't have trusted that guy and he did this to you and I'm sorry and but here's what we do. And I think the number one thing that actually gets them over the hump from the stages of grief they're going through with respect to their business and phase two of their life. The thing that gets them over that hump is a plan. And so I've just learned over the years that I can talk to them and empathize with them and feel their suffering and feel their pain and it's useful. They like that. It's helpful to them. But nothing helps them like a plan,
Yeah.
right? Showing them how they're going to get out of this and how they're going to get closure from it. And that's where you just see like the mountains of burdens fall off their shoulders is when they're like, okay, I have a plan now.
Mm.
And then people call me all the time. They're like, after our initial consultation, I can sleep at night again. I can focus on things. I'm being nicer to my wife and kids because they're just carrying it. They're carrying everything on them and they don't need to. Usually by the time they're me, it's dead, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
So they're carrying all the burden for no reason. Business, isn't coming back.
Mm.
So there's like a real catharsis in sort of guiding them. It's almost like I'm putting them on the boat and we're crossing the river Leth, and we're going to the underworld. They're forgetting they need to forget and move to the future, to the next phase of their life.
Ooh, something one of your friends you introduced me to said one time that w was like horrifying to hear. Uh, when that moment happens for a business owner and it's dead now, and this is exactly how he said it, and I remember this. And this is obviously the worst of the worst, but
Sure.
the wife puts the gun on the table and says, "You know what you need to do now."
Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
And,
that,
and it sounds silly, Chris, but it's not because so many of my clients like can get real self-destructive based on their business success or failure. And from an objective party's perspective, it looks preposterous. I'm like, people come in, they got beautiful families, they got great lives, they got all these things going for them. It's like, so what? Your dry cleaner failed. But to them, it's like they failed.
yeah.
They are a failure. They've let down the family. I just had another guy 2 days ago walk out of my office with a plan, feeling great, who's like basically like just explaining about how beaten up he's been by his spouse
Mm,
and his kids because the business failed
mm,
and how he's excited to go tell them at least what he's going to do to salvage it. Like the thing he took from our meeting was less about going to fix the business than more about, oh, I get to go tell my wife and kids how I have a plan now. That was like his most important takeaway,
mm.
which, it's still sort of surprising sometimes to me because when you're looking at it objectively, you're like, this is no big deal. You're going to be fine.
Yeah. Man, that's powerful. I mean, what's coming to mind is that term, the people we love the most, we want to save face with them. And I'll break the fourth wall on this for any listeners or those watching. Something that Mike and I have a lot of fun on is just ancient wisdom and how true it is. And this whole idea of face, we didn't have a concept for presence in terms of etymology. And over thousands of years, what developed to express the word presence was face. And so, what is in
Mm,
the background of that phrase, to save face, is to feel like a part of me is getting carved out from this failure. It's false,
mm.
but that's what it feels like. So now I'm going to
Yep.
be able to go in and reclaim parts of myself, my presence. I'm going to save face. And for those that were listening that didn't catch it, he just threw out a classical Greek reference there on the river. And so, you know, I'm haunted by this ancient saying that just basically says this: Hey, businessman, you say you're going to go to this city and do business next year, and you're going to go to that city and do business next year.
Hmm.
Maybe you're but a vapor, you know?
Right. Yeah. You really don't know. You have all these plans, but no plan survives the first punch in the face.
Exactly. So you're drawing on in your own mindset just tons of ancient wisdom. And I'd love to connect on that some because I think this takes us back to this idea of the younger attorneys you mentor also. Um, you know, when you think about the ancient thinkers, and we've joked about this before, when that viral TikTok meme occurred where daughters would like go up to their dads or wives would go to their husbands and say, how
I
often do you
think
think
about
about
the
the Roman
Roman
Empire?
Empire every
Yeah,
day. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And
Exactly.
I knew it was going around. And one of my daughters did it to me, and she had the video camera on, and she goes, "Hey, Dad, how often do you think about the Roman Empire?" And I was like, "Well, I think about it a few times a week, but I'll tell you who I think about every day: the ancient Greeks."
Yeah.
And she just dies laughing, and we've had fun
Awesome.
on that. And
Yeah.
I think I would ask it this way: what did they have in their intellect, in their awareness, in their understanding? And I know this is such a big idea to try to reduce down that we forget or we lose.
Well, if you're talking about the classic Greeks, like the
Yeah.
ancient Greeks, like
Yeah.
Plato and before the pre-Socratics.
Yeah.
I mean,
This was your specialty, right? You were going to go be a scholar in this.
yeah. I mean, they had such a interesting and to me at least a beautiful worldview, right? And such an energy to them. And I think the Greeks just had a really honest view of themselves and life, and they were ruthlessly honest about suffering and glory, right? And they could hold both these things in their hands at the same time. And that's really why the Iliad is so beautiful, is that you have this acknowledgement that the things you do on this earth, glory that you can achieve, the battles you can win, these things matter and they're beautiful. And being the best matters and it's awesome and you should fight for it while at the same time feeling the meaninglessness of it all,
Hmm.
right? The sort of so what? You die. I mean, Achilles' choice, where he's told, hey, you can go fight and you'll kill Hector, but in the end, you're going to die, but you'll be the greatest warrior of ever flowing fame among mortals. Or you can go home and you'll have a beautiful life with a wife you love and sheep and riches. And you get to pick Achilles, and he has to pick, right? And the book is like, did he pick right? Well, I don't know, right? But the book's not telling you which way he should have picked. The book's not, the Greeks weren't dogmatic.
Hmm.
It's a good way of putting it. They were just curious. And that's why there's still, there hasn't been a culture probably as interesting as them since. Um, and then that's what it kind of bleeds into the pre-Socratics, who are first time in human history creating a philosophy of the world that is um, just to us it might seem normal, but to them, just the ancient world is completely crazy to think like Heraclitus about all things being motion, right? And um, just this philosophy of a divine but unknowable logos that comes out of Heraclitus that's guiding the universe in some, way that you can't see with your naked eye. And it's just so much deeper than people probably give it credit for or really even understand.
Yeah. And when we consider that vastness, that grandness, that intelligence, it means what we do matters, and at the same time, it pales in comparison to that, and we don't have to be wrapping up our ego in this quarter's numbers. Like
Right.
like this quarter's
Right.
numbers matter, and at the same
Right.
time, there's so much more.
Right, right. And so they really could carry both of those things and not fall into nihilism,
Yeah.
right? They didn't, but it's even more important than that. Like the way I think a lot of other ancient cultures sort of fought against the nihilistic urges you can have is to have a structure, a dogma, a mythology, you know, something like that. And the Greeks, while rejecting nihilism as a principle, also didn't, because they were honest with themselves, um, create an edifice of lies to cover up the the emptiness or the pain or the suffering, right? So rather than try to create a structure of like illusion, don't worry, they embraced both the tragic while also at the same time um, glorying in what you can do. And so you
Mm.
can carry those both. That's what that taught me, right? You can carry both those things in your hands at once. You can care and fight and want to be Achilles. And at the same time, you can recognize that, it a lot of times doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you can build a great business in 100 years, ain't no one in the world gonna even know it was there.
Yeah. Yeah. Is it fair to say that you had reached a level of success, we connect a couple years ago, and you maybe had more of a foot in the meaninglessness of it all regarding the overall leadership of the firm over and above holding in full attention how much it all matters also.
Yeah, I think where I had a big change in my, understanding and conception with respect to the firm and the business was that I had in my mind at least sort of separated these two worlds,
Mm,
right? I had the business world where I was a means, right? I'm gonna make money and do what I need to do, um, so that I can go back and do the things that I really want to do with my life, right?
mm,
So I had created this wall between the two worlds. And so I had a very sort of nihilistic view of the business and a very anti-nihilistic view of what I want to do with my life, right? And what I had never done is seen how I could connect those two things,
yeah.
and that was a huge breakthrough for me. Um, After doing, working with SightShift, what kind of helped really, really start this process of integrating things that I find meaningful into the business as the new reason to motivate me to be in the business, kind of put the money motivation down the ladder a little bit and put new motivations on top of it that started to bleed over into what at least in my mind I thought of as meaningful.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. How would you express those motivations now?
Well, part of the change or maybe even recognition that I had is that what really gets me going, right? Like what do I both enjoy, am good at, and helps people. And so when I started to put those three things together, which you helped me with working on, I started to see, well, I really like mentoring, training up young lawyers. Like that's really a lot of fun for me. I enjoy watching them grow. I enjoy teaching them. I enjoy throwing them into hard things and watching
Mhm.
them suffer, but grow out of it, right? Like I like that. It's fun and it's fulfilling. Um, and I enjoy just uh fixing the problems at the firm in a way that keeps this entity that can be something different in the market um, distinct and effective for its employees. So to maybe really simplify it, I just started focusing more on the people and what I was good at with respect to them, um, rather than, just bottom line of numbers.
Yeah, I love that. What's the simplest way you would express that distinction that you're trying to create? Maybe describe a little bit of the antithesis that's out there in other firms and how you've expressed that to me.
Yeah, sure. So we're all kind of a reaction, whatever it is, we haven't liked earlier in our life, right? So, I started out in the practice, working at a large law firm, in the corporate world, and there were just some aspects of it um, that are sort of maybe inevitable in something that's nationwide, corporate, that large. Maybe not, but they sort of feel structural in a sense. Um, And they're not surprising. I mean, they're just they're businesses, right? And so they're designed to make as much money as possible, and um, they're not really incentivized to cast vision for people or to uh, show the right kind of grace to people or to see the potential in people and work through it. And what I saw is a lot of waste. I mean, I saw really talented people just getting chewed up and spit out because nobody could develop them. And I
Mm,
saw a lot of clients who were, obviously seen for the checks they could write, and it didn't really matter, and it's just that's life. But I mean, just as an example, the summer associate class, so like the new law students that came in the year before me, there were 8 of them, and only one's left at the place I was at, and the other 7 are all wildly successful. So why couldn't this place keep all 8?
mm,
And it was obvious, like they all left because of horrible decisions were made that chased them all away.
mhm.
And so, I think um, I've wanted to create a firm that had a sort of as a reaction to that, right? Kind of anti-corporate um, culture that would um, never lose that kind of talent, and that would always um, seek to give each individual freedom, dignity, treat them like a human being, not like a number. I mean, it's all like really simple stuff, but you'd be surprised, like nobody actually does it.
Mhm.
Like it all sounds good in words, but how many businesses are actually doing that? And
Yeah.
that's I don't think it's that many.
Yeah. Why we see it. I mean, it's why that's on the wall behind me. I know they can't see it because it's blurred out. No more proving or hiding is painted on the brick wall in our office. And it's this idea that, as you've described it, the shark eat shark world of some of these places. When my daughter was learning lifeguard training, she was a lifeguard at the local YMCA for a number of years, and it was so powerful for her to grasp when you are trying to help somebody, if they're drowning and you don't help them correctly, they will drown you trying to save themselves out of their panic.
That's
Uh,
right.
we were at the beach a number of years ago, and it was right around the time she had been through that training. And there was somebody out that got swept away in the tide a little bit. And the lifeguard comes up to the edge of the water, and she's standing there and watching. And and I mean this pejoratively, this do-gooder
Yeah.
jumps up, runs out into the water, starts swimming out to save them. And my daughter and I are standing there, was like, watch this. He's not trained. He doesn't know how to swim, adjusting for the tide. He's about to be another person they have to rescue. And it's exactly what happened. And now she's got
Yep.
2 people. And of course,
Yep.
she'd already radioed in, and they've got jet skis that come out there and all the things that they've got to do to save them. But so many people are drowning in their own insecurities. No matter at what level of leadership they're in, they end up taking others down with them. And I think what you're doing in mentoring attorneys is so powerful. And you said this to me one night at a dinner because I had asked you, tell me what you think the top three marks of a great attorney are. And I've looked for my notes on this. I have the first and the third really clear. The second one's just a touch fuzzy, but I have the general sense. And and I'll remind you of them. I'd love to walk through those. The first one,
Sure.
do you remember the first one?
The first one is they have to own it, right?
Yeah, that was it.
Yeah.
That was it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So tell us what
Yeah.
that means.
Well, yeah. So, I mean, you can have a lot of IQ points in this business, and it will get you somewhere. But at the end of the day, um, can't be a great lawyer unless you take maximal responsibility for the files, clients, and matters you're working on. And you can see it. You can see how hard it is for the young people to take responsibility for things. And I think it's corporate culture in general. You're always passing things up the chain, down the chain, sideways. Like there's a passing the buck culture, and and that probably works to some degree in the corporate world, but I don't really know. I know that in the legal world it doesn't. And if you don't take complete ownership of the problems in your matter or your case with your client, um, you'll never be a great lawyer. And it sounds easy, and maybe it is, simple, but it isn't easy. It is really hard, and it requires really almost a change of your own heart to say, everything that happens in this case is my fault.
Mm,
Everything that goes on in this case is my responsibility.
mm,
Um, and I will tell you, clients, they're not stupid. They're smarter than us a lot of times, and they're very, very perceptive. And if they don't see you having take ownership or buying in, they will recognize that you are not their guy.
mm,
And even if they subconsciously recognize it, they will say, this guy is not all in for me. And
mm,
they're coming, this isn't like I'm not their plumber, right? They're not coming to me, they don't really care if I'm locked in, right? When your plumber, your air conditioning guy comes to the house, you're not looking at him to make sure is this guy in it to win it. You know what I mean? You just get it done. I don't care if you're high, whatever, just, as long as you know what you're doing, right? But with your lawyer, when they come to me, it's everything is going wrong.
mm,
Something horrible has just happened. Their whole business is about to go down. Someone has either not paid them a lot of money or they haven't paid someone a lot of money and they're in trouble. And you can't help them unless you own it.
mm.
So that's number one.
Beautiful, man. And the third one I remember very clearly. So let's hit that one first, and we'll see if we can get at the second one. It was purity of heart. Purity of heart. What did you
Yeah.
mean by that when you said that?
So this one is personal for me in a sense because I think it's the reason why a lot of lawyers and I'm sure other business people struggle. Um, and there has to be like a radical purity of heart in the sense that I am going to put my client's interests first. I am going to give the best objective advice I can. I am not going to let my fear, my insecurities, dictate the actions I take in my case for my client. If it's best for my client to go do a scary thing, I will go do the scary thing. And I will not try to find a way out of it. If it's best for my client to settle a case, that would mean a lot of legal fees for me if we kept fighting. I have to go all in on trying to settle that case. And that's why I think I used when we were talking probably the word purity, right? Because it is kind of something where you just have to draw that line. And I don't think any lawyer that wants to be a great lawyer can be lukewarm on this. Like you can't say you can't, there's no middle ground on this,
Mm,
right? You can't be like, well, I'm gonna do what's this is kind of best for me and kind of best for them.
mm.
You know, uh, I know they should settle this case, but I'll stretch it out for another 6 months or something. You know what I mean? Then I'll settle it. Like you just, it doesn't work that way. You're either like taking advantage of them or you're doing the right thing. And as long as you're in the position of um, acting out of fear, either a fear of losing or fear of looking foolish or fear of doing a bad job at the trial or hearing or fear of not getting the money in that you need to pay payroll. If any of those are dictating why you're taking action in your cases, then you're doing everyone a disservice. Clients are going to at least subconsciously figure it out, and it's going to affect your reputation.
Yeah. Powerful. And I wanted this to get drawn out because I think these are so huge for all of us, right? What does it mean to own it? What does it mean to have purity of heart? The other one was around this idea of not stopping until it's done.
Oh yeah,
I don't remember
yeah,
how you said it. So does that give you enough of a recollection?
yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. So
Yeah.
that's kind of built into one of our firm core values on persistence, and um, this one's it probably is translatable to other industries as well. In the legal world, you know, there are always easy answers,
Hmm.
right? Like they say there's no easy answers. No, in the legal world, there's always easy answers, but they're not the best answers, right? Because our problems generally don't have a black and white,
Yeah.
right? They don't, it's not like this is right and this is right, this is wrong. Like it's usually arguable. And that's why people pay us.
Yeah.
So the there's a species of lawyers, maybe even most lawyers, who will be confronted with a difficult or complex problem and will do a little bit of research, come up with an idea of what they think the right answer should be based on that little bit of research, throw it into ChatGPT. That looks right, you know, and then go with it, right? And they'll go to court and they'll argue it. Maybe they'll win, maybe they'll lose. Um, but they're not actually figuring the problem out.
Yeah.
And they're on a surface level of the problem.
Yeah.
And a lot of times what we see is a lot of um, conclusory statements from lawyers that are like, well, this is the way it is because it should be, and there's not a lot of analysis. And so we kind of consider it like the analogy we use at the firm with our associates is when they're going to build a new skyscraper here in Orlando, they take these concrete pilings and they pile them into the ground. And after 100 of these piling, they take this column and they just smash it with a huge hammer, right? And after 100 of those, it's pretty firm in there, but they don't stop until they hit the bedrock,
Hmm.
right? Like, and that's when you stop. And so, because otherwise it looks great, but when the earthquake comes, it's not going to make it. And what's the earthquake in my business? It's opposing counsel. Our whole job is whatever I'm working on, there's another person just as smart as me whose job is to make me look like an idiot. And that's my every day. Every day I've got whatever 40 cases going on, and that means there's 40 other lawyers whose whole job is to make me look bad. And they get up every morning and they drink their coffee and they put their Zen pouch in and they're thinking, how do I make Mike Nardella look like an idiot? And there will be nothing to show you that your column hasn't hit bedrock like another very smart person who actually gets to bedrock first.
Mm.
And so to be a great lawyer, it's a long-winded answer, but to be a great lawyer, you can't stop with the superficial analysis. It's painful. You gotta like Huberman says, you gotta like fight through to get to the dopamine. The dopamine is an hour away, but you have to fight through for it to get there. And not a lot of people actually can do that. Like they can't get through. They get the easy answer and then they lose all motivation to get to the deeper answer.
Yeah. Dude. I mean, I loved having you walk us through those because that's so huge. And I think it's huge for everyone. I mean, for us, it's like So you tried the trust falls. Did that get to the bedrock? When have I
Right.
ever been in an issue with my daughter and I've put my hand on her shoulder and said, "Hey, they do these things at companies. Trust falls fix bad problems in relationships." No, it's not bedrock. It's not bedrock.
Right.
Man, that was powerful. So what I'd love to do is ask just a few questions around the work that we did together, just to help paint the picture for those that might be listening that they're like, oh, I want some of that. I want some of that juice. And then we'll
Sure.
end with some fun rapid fire questions. We've kind of talked about like where you were with your overall relationship to the mission and vision of the firm and some things that we did in the coaching to synthesize and integrate and unblock that. There's no wrong or right here, but if you were trying to describe like why were you compelled to work together in a way that was beyond the coaching into where we're serving your organization in a comprehensive way. Measurement, data, coaching others, our academy, all of that kind of stuff. You don't have to go into a lot of detail, but why would you be motivated to do that?
Yeah. So the for me it was I was able to see that what you and SightShift have put together on a coaching level actually works, right? And so, there's a lot of talk that I'm used to hearing. Maybe we'll call it surface level, just be better or, follow your heart or follow your dreams. You can hear all these different kinds of things to kind of either coach you or motivate you, or there's all kinds of books you can read. Um, but one of the neat things about the coaching was that um, like it came with a book, your figure that shift out book. And I remember thinking during the process, like if I read this book on my own, I might have gotten 40% out of it.
Mm.
Like if it weren't for the coaching, I would never have seen the other 60% that was in the book. Even though it's a short little book. If I could have read it 10 times, I wouldn't have only gotten about 40% of it. And so you see, like, you can't feed yourself everything.
Mm.
Um, you need other people to help you. They need to feed you. They're experts in whatever it is they're doing. And um, I was never even initially attracted to coaching in the first place,
Yeah,
right?
you
Just
had some
because
cynicism, I
I had
remember.
some great cynicism about it, but other people who I greatly respect, big proponents, I said, well, they might know what they're talking about. So, but once I saw, I was like, okay, this works, and this is more than just a book. It's not going to translate in words. You can't do this on your own. I can't do this as effectively as Chris did this with me for my people. I want my people to have at least some elements of this because it's so helpful for me. Um, and they're saying, SightShift is saying they have a program that does this for the business as a whole. Um, and I'm sure it won't be as deep as the one-on-one stuff, but I don't need it to be that deep. I just, I need it to be effective.
Mm.
And having seen what was effective in my life, I thought, well, even if, you know, 20%, 30% of that can be imparted to the firm as a whole, that'd be huge 30%, right? Um, So that was a big driver. It's just seeing like, okay, you find something that works, you go with it, right? You don't like not do things that work because very few things actually work, especially when it comes to the realm of human beings and motivations and insecurities. I mean, these are things, it's hard to find, um, what were you? I almost think of it as like almost like a malware detector for like bad cultural problems, right? Like they don't,
Mm.
McAfee for the culture, right? Like you don't even know where the malware is. Um,
I'm going to steal that
so
forever. Just trademarked. Thank you.
yeah, put your TM on it, buddy. But it's just you don't know, and so you see
Malware
something,
detector for culture. That's awesome.
you just don't know where it is, and um, and like those detectors myself, like I only know how to spot what I've seen. Other people have seen other things, and they saw things, used during our coaching, saw things in me that I didn't see, and then was helpful.
Yeah.
So,
That means
so
it's
yeah,
helpful.
you feel like when something works, you don't, even if it works on a one-on-one basis, you can see how the principles would also work on an organization-wide basis. And I wasn't under any illusions that it was, that it would be as effective as one-on-one coaching for each and every person in my business. But I could see that even a small amount of effectiveness would be useful. So that was what drove me to it. And then, of course, I've seen it be even more effective than I expected. And um, even some of the things that I kind of hoped would happen, but I wasn't really sure and have happened, like insofar as it's given the organization, kind of a common language for how to talk about conflict and, how to recognize when um, things are being done for the wrong motives and, yeah, keeping all that out in the open and having everyone, even just the point of having everyone in the firm thinking about these things.
Mm.
Hey, maybe I did this because I am trying to cover up for something else. Maybe I was a jerk yesterday because I got defensive because I'm afraid that I thought something bad was going to happen. Or, that's just been so helpful to have that. And vocabulary is such a bad word for it because it's really a system of thinking that has um, kind of implanted into the minds of the people here that has brought a lot of these things from subconscious to consciousness. And just the mere act of these things being in their consciousness, that in and of itself is extremely valuable, coupled with now having some tools that are proven to work in my own life for actually handling the issues now that they've bubbled up into consciousness.
Oh man, that's powerful. That's awesome. And now we're in a place, and we'll have to do a part two on this, where you're going after a big vision, and you've brought leaders into that to own and share that with you. And I can't wait till we can say, okay, there's an ROI of personal human transformation. In your own words, what you've told me, you're seeing the ROI regarding bottom line, just growth and where things are headed. But we're trying to go to a big place, climb a big mountain. And
Mhm.
and I love, a couple times I've heard you say it with people. It's like, I see the ROI. We've got people that have stayed that we're going to go. We've got the bottom line to supporting the business growth, and so powerful. So I know we're right at the hour. Do you have 2 minutes for a few rapid fire questions?
Yeah, sure.
Beautiful. I love asking these just as a way of the curiosities of humanity and how we learn. So these might be uncomfortable. All right. Number one, what do you like most about being you?
Oh, wow. You talk about an uncomfortable question. What do I like most about being me? Hmm. You gotta make me think here. I I think I like in some ways what I've become in a sense that I I've gotten to a better place in my life where I can take big risks and um fight fights and be the happy warrior while not losing sleep or worrying about stuff. And I think that's just a gift from God that I have.
Mm,
I just appreciate as a part of my life because it was not always like this, right?
yeah.
And this is a change. This is not my natural state. My natural state is anxious and depressed and worried about stuff. And um, so having moving past that to a place in life where I can be more like we were talking about with the Greeks, where I can not let the tragedy of the world stop me from or sap the joy out of life, and I can be comfortable uh, with whatever the circumstances are, right? Like, you know,
That's awesome.
and
You know,
that's different.
yeah, I still remember, and this is just hitting me now. You had sent an email with the first office space expansion, like, okay, we're doing this,
That's
and
right.
and that felt like appropriately so, this scary, risky step, and now how far that is in the rearview mirror in such a short time, you know.
Right.
That's awesome. Second, if you could wave a magic wand and cut out any technology in our world, what would you remove and why?
Ooh. Um, I could cut out any technology in the modern world. Oh man, this is a tough one because there's so many. You know, it's like I always say, like you can't go back, right? We're
You
never going
can't.
back. It is
No,
what it is. We're
it's
stuck with all
here.
these things. You got to use them. But you know, I'm certainly nostalgic. I feel bad for my kids that they'll never know the freedom I knew riding a bike around without a cell phone,
Mm,
and that they're always tethered to the state and their
mm,
parents and everything else. Um, and you know, it's hard because like there's obviously technologies I hate, like you know, weird stuff they're doing, trying to like clone and splice animals, and you know what I mean? It's like, no, that stuff sounds good, but I know there's probably some good application. It's just, you know, everything is good and bad.
yeah.
Um, so it's difficult because even like a nuclear weapon, on the one hand, it's bad, and on the other side, there's good things about,
Yeah.
you know, nuclear power and whatever. So it's tough. I can't really pick anything because I think everything has a good side to it. Um, but I think I'm more nostalgic, uh, or maybe, and it could just be sentimentalism, but I think there's an enormous cost to all of this technology to our human life. And I was just talking, this is a little off track, but I was just even talking about this with one of my partners here about our sons and how, you know, my son's already getting, you know, told by his teacher that he doesn't pay attention and all these things. He's, you know, he's in kindergarten. And you know, there's this ADD and everything going around. And I think you know, if I just lived on a farm and my son just worked with me all day and was milking cows and helping me with chickens and whatever from age 4 to age 18, like there, you know, how just nice that would be to spend all day with him doing things.
Yeah.
Instead, I'm here in this box downtown Orlando, and he's in a box in downtown Winter Garden, and he's got some lady yelling at him all day about learning math problems, and I'm sitting here dealing with whatever explosions happen at someone's business, and I'm just like, we've lost something, you know, because he can't come here and help me. The technology, like my 6-year-old son could do no good here at the law firm,
Yeah.
but he'd be actually helpful on a farm.
Yeah.
And so it's not really the answer you're looking for, but you
No,
know,
it's
I
great.
think there's just we sometimes just forget, you know, and like look at how easy it is for people to travel, and that's great. You know, I want to see the world, all that stuff. But now everybody's kids move thousands of miles away from them. They don't live together with their families.
Mm,
If it were hard to travel, they wouldn't do that.
yeah.
You know, it's like so it's yeah, so yeah, technology obviously is what it is, but we I don't even know. I don't know if humans are capable of really maintaining a human-centered, human-centric existence in light of all this technology. I think in the end we end up bending our lives around it.
Yeah. Yeah. It does seem to be the way it's going. So in because that's happening, what's your favorite experiences? Last question. When do you feel the most that sigh come over you, the depth of community, depth of interaction? What are your favorite experiences? So I can give you mine just as a way to help illustrate it. We actually
Sure.
had one. You and who's now a mutual friend, one of your best friends came up and we did like a 4.5 hour dinner. We shut the place down. Like that for me is like one of my peak favorite community experiences. I love sharing that with the right special people. What for you is something that represents kind of the richness of the lingering moments of community?
Well, you know, to bring this not intentionally, but to sort of bring this full circle back to the business, I mean, I spent so long just seeing the business as uh, a means to an end in the sense of, you know, uh, build build up money and then do what you want instead of doing both. And so I can distinctly remember like the last two Christmas parties of the firm where we had everybody there and all their kids and all their significant others and um you got 100 people there and they're all having a great time, a really great time. And it's just like, wow, like this is super meaningful. And this is awesome to have built something that does this. And um and suddenly here I am extracting deep meaning and community from what I formerly saw as sort of like this thing I had to do because I have to survive and feed my kids. And it's like, wow. And so, um, to see something like that it is and continues to be very meaningful to me. And every year, I keep thinking like, Christmas party will never be this good again, and then it's better. So, knocking on wood, but that's one example.
Thank you, man. I felt like I could see it there and be there with you, and that was so beautiful. Um, Thank you for being here on the show today and doing this episode. Special gift to me to have you launch us into this new series and the way you just shared with others, help them be better. I'll close the episode out by saying, folks, this is an episode that's really special. I want to make sure that you took your notes, you check it out, and you learn how to reintegrate what it means, the meaning and the drive that you felt in earlier stages to the work you're doing now, and how to hold yourself to the highest standard, to be that kind of person who owns it, who approaches it with a purity of heart and gets down to the bedrock, not trying to solve root issues at the fruit level. Mike, thank you so much for being here today, buddy.
Hey man, thanks. This was great.
Thanks for joining me on this episode. There's always more for you at SightShift, SIGHT, shift.com to be the leader you were meant to be.